Perfect. I think we'll make a start then. Can everyone see my slides and hear me? Just give me a nod, Mike or Victoria.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome everyone to today's event. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and to chat to us today about how we can best make Open Research Europe future-proof and a sustainable and robust publishing platform for the future. So a couple of housekeeping notes. You might have already noticed and been alerted that this meeting is being recorded, and you'll all receive a link to the recording shortly. The slides are already available on Zenodo, and Athena will be putting a link in the chat for you to have a look at them should you want to. And we're hoping that you'll have lots of questions and discussion points at the end, so feel free to put them in the chat box or raise your hand and unmute yourselves and show your videos and chat to us at the end. So to give a bit of an introduction, I'm Kelly. I'm the Senior Associate Publisher at F1000, and I'm responsible for looking after Open Research Europe in collaboration, of course, with the European Commission and also our partners at LIBA, Eurodoc and UIA. We also have with us today Mike Evans, who's the Production Manager at F1000, and he works on Open Research Europe with me. And he's responsible for the archiving and indexing of all of our content. And then we also have Victoria, who's a policy officer at the European Commission, who I work with very closely on Open Research Europe. And and she's going to speak to us later on about the future of the platform and what the Commission hopes for the platform going forwards. So I'll just pause at this moment and let Athena run a little poll just to see who we have with us today in the event. Oh, thank you. Lots of quick responses in there. So I can see that we're about 50% of you are research librarians, and then 8% researchers, and about 40% are other. So feel free to pop in the chat if you're an other, and let us know what you are, what you do, and then what brought you here today. And with that, I think I'll move on. So as I mentioned already, thanks very much for joining today. I'm going to start with a bit of a general update on how Open Research Europe is performing as we approach the sort of 1-year anniversary of the platform. And then I'll hand over to Mike, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we connect our content to research library repositories. So as I'm sure you're all aware, Open Research Europe was launched in March of last year in collaboration with the European Commission, or as a collaboration between the EC and F1000 Research. So how have we actually been doing over the last year in terms of published articles? So as you can see, we've received a consistent stream of submissions since the launch of the platform last year, that has been quickly followed by publications and ultimately by those papers passing peer review. And I'll talk a little bit more about the times of that in more detail later on. To date, we have received we have published 180 articles on the platform, and 83 of those have passed peer review since publication. On the left pie chart, you can see the breakdown of the published articles by subject area. And on the right hand side, you can see a comparison between, you can see the proportion of the Horizon 2020 grants within these same subject areas. So you can kind of see how well we're doing in comparison to where the grant funding actually went in these different subjects. So currently we're publishing a little bit more social science and engineering papers on the platform than we might have expected if you look at the proportion of grants in that area, but fewer natural science papers than we would expect. So we're working to see how we can sort of improve within the natural sciences area, but also capitalize on the popularity of the platform within social sciences and engineering and technology. I also wanted to give a breakdown by article type, because I think one of the major benefits of the platform is the ability to publish different article types on the platform, aside from just your standard research articles. So the graph on the left hand side here is showing the split of articles across the platform in total, and then on the right is by subject area again. So apologies that the legend seems to have cut off. That's Maybe I can change that. Hang on a second. Oh yeah, that's much better. Apologies, I just didn't want you to miss out on that information. Perfect, that's much better. Okay, so like I said, the graph on the left here is showing the split of article types across the total platform. So you can see that over 50%, I think it's 56% of our
Ellie,
content.
Sorry to interrupt, I think you're not sharing now, so could you try to reshare your presentation? Great.
There we go.
Thank you.
Apologies. There we go, that's much better. So now you can see, so yeah, split of article types across the platform as a whole. So you can see that nearly 60% of our articles are original research articles, which is excellent. And we would hope that the majority of the papers are research articles, but we also see massive uptake in our more alternative article types that we offer, such as method papers and case studies, data notes, software tools. If you've been keeping an eye on our social media recently, you will have seen a highlight on some of our more alternative article types mentioned there. And of course, there's more information available about all of them on the website. On the right-hand side, you can see the split of article types by subject area as well. So the trend continues of each of the subject areas favouring research articles, but there is an increased usage of software tool articles within the natural sciences and the engineering and technology disciplines. And we also have a lot more reviews and systematic reviews being published within the medical and health field. And this information is really useful to us to see how we might best appeal to researchers within the different disciplines with the article types that they are already keen on submitting to Open Research Europe. So to explore the geographic spread of our papers, the graph on the left shows the published papers by country of first author to give us an indication of where the majority of our papers are coming from on the platform. And of course, these papers are coming from teams of researchers, which are often spread across multiple institutions and countries, but at least this can give us a rough idea of the geographic spread we're currently achieving. On the right-hand side, you can see the distribution of Horizon 2020 funding across the top 20 most funded countries to see if it's comparable to where we're receiving papers from. So as you can see, we're tracking quite nicely with this data in the sense that most of our papers are coming from the most well-funded countries, as you might expect, but we are still getting some papers in from some of the lesser funded countries. So a couple of surprises there being Ireland, with more papers coming in than we might have anticipated, and Israel, which appears in this top 20 list, but we haven't yet received any first author submissions from Israel. So this helps us to see sort of how we're doing in the different countries. I also wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of our review times. So I've broken this down by the different categories of peer review or different stages of peer review. So the first 3 points are looking at the speed of our pre-publication process. So this first one is how long is it taking us from submission to perform our in-house editorial checks on the articles, which is taking roughly 8 days, and this is similar across all of the subject areas. The second point is how long it's taking from when the author submits their revisions to the article being published on the website. So this is taking roughly 13 days, although it is somewhat shorter in the humanities subjects. This time period includes the final checks that are conducted by our in-house editorial team, typesetting and formatting by our production team, as well as liaising with the authors to get appropriate reviewer suggestions. And this third point just summarizes the whole pre-publication process. So how long is it taking on average from the first submission to publication of the article on the platform? And across all time, this is 42 days on average. We are working on getting this number down, as speed of publication was identified as one of the most important selling points according to a recent author survey of ORE authors. The second 3 points on this graph show the speed of our peer review process. So how long from publication to the first peer review report being received, the second, and how long until the article actually passes peer review. So again, so from the first peer review until it's taking on average 25 days for us to get the first peer review, 53 to get the second peer review report, and on average about 79 days for the article to be passing peer review. We do see these numbers being a little bit higher in the medical and health field, which isn't surprising. I've worked in that field before for quite a long time, and it does often take longer to get peer review reports within that field. So that's not surprising for us. For comparison, the time to first decision on PLOS One as another major a multidisciplinary journal or publishing venue, it takes about 43 days from submission to first decision, and that does not factor in any revisions by the author, whereas the numbers that I'm presenting do. And it's also worth noting that we're tracking very well in terms of average numbers on Wellcome Open Research or F1000 research, so we're doing very well in terms of peer review times, but we are looking to decrease this where possible. We're also reaching out to an average of 8 reviewers per paper, and it's taking roughly 8 reviewers or reaching out to 8 reviewers to get a paper past peer review as well. So that number isn't changing. I always get asked that question, how many reviewers do we need to reach out to? Finally, a bit of an update on indexation. So obviously this is a really fundamental part of our strategy to increase our discoverability and raise discoverability and visibility of the articles that we're publishing. So we have now been included in Open Alex, which, if you're not aware, is the new sort of replacement for the Microsoft Academic Graph software. We've also been approved by a couple of national approved lists of publication venues, such as the Norwegian and the South African approved lists. We've also been included in Ulrich's Web and Sherpa Romeo as part of JISC, and also we're included in Europe PMC. So that's all the updates that I had, and I'll leave it there and hand over to Mike.
Thanks, Kelly. Cool. Hi, everybody. Yeah, just let me share my screen 1 second. How's that looking? Can we all see that? Yes.
All good. Yeah.
Brilliant. Phew. Well, that's the hard bit done. Cool. Yeah. So thanks very much for having me. I'm Mike, the production manager at F1000. So kind of alongside the day-to-day production work on the platform, my team also work on the dissemination of ORE content to indexes, to archives, and kind of increasingly, or more recently rather, to institutions and libraries. So I think the indexing of ORE content really has to be looked at in the context of its publishing model. I'm aware, well, I was made aware just before the call, that a lot of you are familiar with our model already. So I'll kind of keep this overview mercifully brief. So after passing a set of kind of pre-publication checks, the first version, or the version 1 as we call it, of an article will get published, open access, and roughly within 10 days from when it was submitted. That version 1 is kind of analogous with a preprint, albeit one that you cannot then send on to another journal for publication. The peer reviewers are then selected and invited, and their reviews, names, and the approval status they give the article are then published alongside the article, together with any responses from the authors. Authors are then able, or in fact encouraged, I guess, to publish revised versions of their article. Typically, they'll do that to address any comments raised by the peer reviewers, and those revised versions are then also peer reviewed. So typically you go version 1 published, then peer reviewed, then version 2 published, and then peer reviewed. Just as it is possible for only one version to be published, it's also possible for that cycle of kind of publishing and revision to continue on. For the vast majority of papers, we find that authors will stop revising once the reviewers have given enough positive approval statuses that it passes the threshold for us to mark it as having passed peer review. And that is at that stage that we then send it to indexes and archives. And that will normally happen within the first 2 versions. All versions are also linked, and they all have their own DOIs, so they're independently citable. So why is this important? What might you need to consider when trying to index in content that's published under this model? I think probably the most common refrain we hear from people who want to index content is that they always want to be sent the version of record. But what that is in this model is just isn't immediately clear. So you could think of each version we publish as being its own version of record, as they all have their own DOIs. But if you go down that route, how do you kind of square that with the idea of a journal article being a single entity? Alternatively, if you do think a journal article is a single entity and you only want to receive one version, then which one would you pick? And how do you deal with the fact that it might well get superseded? The good news around this is that currently there isn't really a right answer. It's kind of something that's up for discussion quite a lot as lots of publishers start kind of publishing under this model. There's a current NISO, the standards organization working group, looking at kind of lots of issues around this and looking at the kind of the use cases and naming of different article versions as their previous kind of standard and advice came out in 2008. And they're obviously aware that publishing has changed quite a lot since then. Versions can also cause issues for your databases. So while the content, like the body text of later versions will change, probably the majority of the core metadata, so we're talking kind of title, abstract, author list, is likely to stay the same. So if you're running any kind of clever deduplicating software, it can often incorrectly think that the later versions are duplicates of the earlier ones and just delete them as soon as it receives them. We've had that happen more times than I care to mention on various platforms. Similarly, with reporting, if you're using your databases to run reports on your own content, and you happen to store all of the versions as though they were kind of totally unrelated articles, that can give you a misleading impression in your reports, because it might tell you you've got a lot of content in one particular field, and it's just because there's one paper with many, many versions. Likewise, you have to kind of think about how versions fit into the UI of your current site. So things like, what do you want to display on search? Do you want all the versions appearing on search? And if so, if you're not displaying many search results, again, it could unjustly kind of dominate your search results. If you've only got 5 hits, do you really want 2 or 3 of them just to be the same paper? And likewise, there's kind of navigation to consider. How can users navigate between versions? Will it be obvious which version they're on? Is the peer review displayed? There's kind of all of these sorts of questions. So how do people deal with this? This is currently all sounding very difficult and hard. And for kind of the most thorough integrations, it can take a bit of work. I think probably what we consider kind of the gold standard integration that we've had so far, not on ORE, but when ORE does get accepted by PubMed, it will follow this model, is PubMed Central. They make all the versions available. It's all full text. They include all of the peer review reports, and they are all full text as well. You can see there on each version you're on, there's a drop down to get to the other versions of the article, and their search results kind of consolidate all the records together. So you only get one listing when you search for an article, and that listing will always be the latest one. However, we're realistic. The level of kind of system customization, whether that be on the UI front or the data processing side of things, required to make that work just isn't always possible, whether that be due to your finances, time, limitations of your system, or good old-fashioned lack of will, I guess. So we're more than happy to support partners in doing what they can to display our content to the best of their ability or to the best of what their system functionality allows. So for example, here's a record from the DOHA. It's metadata only, so there's no full text to deal with. Each time they receive a new version, they just overwrite the previous one. So their system only ever has to deal with one record. And therefore, there's only going to be one search results, which will always conveniently be the latest. They also don't deal with the peer review reports, and instead they've just got the status there within the title. As well as trying to provide any kind of technical support you require during setup periods, there's also some technical qualities of our data that can help those that want to do kind of more detailed integrations. So for example, the only thing that changes in a DOI across the different versions of an article is the last digit. So that last digit is a suffix indicating the version number. So .1 for version 1, .2 for version 2, and so on and so forth. with the peer review. So there's no need to be trying to kind of sum statuses from within the XML. We provide peer review information within the title group of the XML, so it can easily be added into your title fields. And crucially, our own website UI is very good. So it provides a prompt to readers when they're not viewing the latest version of an article. So in the case of kind of very minimal metadata records being displayed, if a reader then follows a full text link back to the ORE site, then they'll receive that pop-up and they can navigate, and all the extras can be handled at our end. So how do we get our content to index and archives? You've probably noticed that a lot of this has been quite index and archive focused. I've said those two words a lot, and not so much kind of institutions and libraries. And that's because our initial focus as a publisher has been a lot more on the likes of the big mega indexes like PMC and Scopus. So for them, we supply in fairly traditional ways. There's a lot of full text or metadata files in JATs or their own custom schemas, and we're normally feeding directly to FTP sites. On ORE, we have also done some pushing of JSON metadata records to REST APIs. For instance, we have that set up with Zenodo currently, and also all of our Crossref DOI submissions have got text and data mining URLs for anyone who wants to come and crawl our site for content. Which kind of brings us on to now and what we want to do in the future. So we've just developed our own API. It's pretty basic, but it's there for anyone who wants to take content from us. You don't need an API key to query it. And you can query using about 20 different terms, I think, and combine them as you please. I've put 4 in the slide there. That seems like they might be of the most interest. Those queries will get you a list of DOIs, and then in turn, you can use the DOIs to retrieve the JATS XML of the article. I'm aware that's a 2-step process though, so we want to do more. So yeah, we welcome via the survey that I think has already been circulated your suggestions or maybe even requirements for how you need to receive or fetch content. Obviously, if there's a method that is overwhelmingly popular amongst you all, then we'd be happy to put the work in to try and meet that requirement rather than asking everyone to reinvent the wheel for us. And I think not to prejudge the results, but certainly one thing that's come up quite a lot in recent discussions is using OAI PMH. So yeah, we're looking to become a compliant data provider as soon as we can. And we could be able to use the sets kind of functionality of that to provide custom subsets to you all. And that is me, I believe. Yeah, thank you very much.
So we'll hand over to Victoria now to talk a little bit more about plans for the future of ORE.
Yes, thank you. I will try to share my screen. Okay, I will share this up. Let's see. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
We can.
I'm trying to, probably you can see a little window up. Let me minimize that as well. So, okay. So good afternoon, colleagues. It's good to be here with you. As Kelly said earlier, I work for the European Commission, and myself with some other colleagues are responsible for Open Research Europe. And as you already probably know, we have a contract to run Open Research Europe until 2024 with F1000, who is our publishing partner. However, of course, as Open Research Europe, or as we lovingly call it, is already part of the European research area, which means the Commission is committed to it for quite a while, and is gradually becoming an important tool for publishing within Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. Our full intention, of course, is to continue with providing this service for quite a while in the future. So, in fact, what we are thinking, our current thoughts, and these are not have not been formalized, but we are heading towards this direction, was to expand or to serve researchers with national funding from various member states. this means to start with. This means gradually seeing if there is national funders, for example, or other funders who are interested in partnerships that will enable Open Research Europe to be a platform that goes beyond Horizon Europe. And in fact, in the long term, what we would like to see is that ORE is a reliable publishing platform that is collectively maintained by European funders and research institutions for all researchers with no author-facing fees, meaning the so-called diamond model of publishing. And this we will be able, hopefully in the future, to do because there is a lot of vested interest by funders and research institutions in Open Research Europe. Obviously, this will take a long time or some time as this is a process, right? And also there are processes within the Commission, within member states, within institutions. So we are currently exploring of ways that we can through which we can proceed in the future in this general direction. And of course, this is also always. It always depends on the interest and commitment. So as you understand, this entails not only willingness, but actual commitment to commit funding and resources to this end. And another thing, of course, that comes to our mind, that's very much in our mind as we're thinking about the future, is that ORE becomes technologically autonomous, really, when you have a vision for a long time to come. It's not very reliable, as we now, of course, are relying on tenders to be changing the infrastructure underlying this service all the time. So we are thinking of how to proceed, and perhaps in the direction of developing a platform that will infrastructure that will serve ORE in the future. So this is the general direction. Again, as I've just told you, it's not something that's decided. It's something that is in our minds and our plan that we are discussing with our hierarchy, and we will start discussing also with funders in member states very soon. However, since we also do not know how long such a potential arrangement and agreement among parties beyond the Commission takes, we are, of course, committed to running ORE as we do now until 2026, meaning having an external publishing provider that provides the infrastructure and publishing and other services which we get from F1000. Our thoughts are also possibly to address the technological autonomy to develop an open source platform on which to base the service in the future. So we are working to prepare in this direction, discussing, as I said, with other funders, and begin, of course, to clarify legal and organizational requirements that would lead us to such a scenario, how to operationalize such a scenario. So things need to become much more concrete, in other words, to move forward. So these are our broad plans. I will not speak very concretely and specifically, as I'm not supposed to at this stage, but I think you get the point and the general direction where we want to head in the future. So to do this, and I guess to come back to the main point of this webinar, which is, of course, partly also how to embed or within the libraries through indexing, for example, as Michael also discussed earlier, but also within the scientific community, we do feel, of course, that the continuous work with research performing organizations is required. And you, as if most of you are librarians, for example, and LIBEL members, your participation in this work is very crucial to secure a future and future-proof Open Research Europe. So we've seen that it started at a good footing, ORE has, but to become gradually a trusted publishing partner, it needs to acquire the trust and the critical mass of researchers that publish in it. So you'll know that this takes time. for researchers to publish, to trust a venue. And also, obviously, we are heading to this direction with indexing and the rest bit. It's quite important. Researchers are, of course, used to publishing in venues that will benefit them professionally, and this makes sense because they are assessed and the assessment system works in specific ways currently. So extra effort and extra miles are necessary to say convince in the beginning researchers to trust ORE, because it is a quality platform that has high quality policies and is scientifically robust. So, but this part needs continuous work, and we do need your help in that. Again, we need your support for concrete and sustained actions for the uptake with the research communities and with the universities. For example, I think Kelly showed earlier that Open Research Europe is now in lists of accredited, so to speak, publications in various countries. We want to support this work and maybe also through LIBER for ORE to become, to come into the radar also of university management, say, to be included in lists where this is relevant, or in evaluations, criteria, let's say, or procedures where this is relevant. And just to jumpstart a conversation, I think a conversation and questions can be directed to all three of us, and regarding what was presented earlier. But on my part of the presentation, I mean, we do welcome ideas on how, what concretely can be done by LIBER and its members and you to promote systematically ORE to researchers and to universities, and to eventually, of course, embed ORE as a tool that researchers will naturally turn to for the publishing needs as a reliable publishing partner. So I think with this in mind, this was the short presentation that I had, and maybe I guess then the floor is open for questions or discussion.
Perfect, thanks, Victoria. So we did already have one question from Volker Beckman. So he's asking, with 177 publications from the more than 35,000 Horizon 2020 projects, those are small numbers at the minute, and we should be careful using these to draw conclusions on how well ORE is accepted and visible within the different countries. Do we have any idea what the primary reason is that colleagues are not considering Open Research Europe for their publication? Is it because they don't know about it, or is it because they decide against it? I think anecdotally, from speaking to researchers and hearing from my team who do this regularly, the main reason that people are currently put off of publishing in Open Research Europe is linked to what Victoria just mentioned about research assessment and the fact that we are not indexed in very many places at the minute. However, when you actually discuss with these researchers that there are a certain number of criteria that a publishing platform or a journal must meet before they can actually be included into these sorts of indexes and metrics, like the impact factor, for example. They're much more understanding as to why we're not there yet. It's not really a reflection on the quality of Open Research Europe as a platform, or the content or the quality of the content that we're publishing. It's just that we need to acquire a certain amount of content, or we need to have been publishing for a certain amount of time to meet their criteria. So that can help to sort of appease their worries there. And we also focus on the article level metrics that we are offering on the platform already. So we can prove that the content that we have published on the platform is already accruing views, downloads, and citations, both the preprint type content, as Mike mentioned, but also the content that has passed peer review. So even though we're not in these indexes yet, people are still engaging with our content, and that's really positive. And it's a big focus of ours this year to improve our indexation and the discoverability of the platform. So I hope that answers the question, but feel free to chip in. Victoria, did you have anything to add to that, or Mike?
No, I think you said it all. But another interesting point, I mean, it's qualitative information from this author survey that was carried out by F1000. I think I was struck to see that the authors who responded, and it was a lot of them, the uptake of the survey was good, was that they were pleased actually with their experience and they would recommend it. So I mean, it's okay, it's a rough start. You all know, if you're involved in publishing, to launch a new publishing venue. So it's it takes a bit of time for it to become, say, established. So as Kelly said, we are working, and F1000 is on various directions to but for me, I was pleasantly surprised, I also have to say, to see that those authors that did publish are very, very pleased. They also like the openness and transparency. So, and I think that Open Research Europe, is, of course, we know by other platforms that F1000 runs, does adopt not only openness of peer review, but also a post-publication review model, which is not, your standard publishing model. So there's a lot of novelties here also for researchers to digest. At the same time, aside from the fact that this is a new publication with, no history. So I am positive, I think, by the feedback also we have received.
I think it was 86% of authors in that survey actually said that they would recommend Open Research Europe to their colleagues. So yeah, I mean, that's an amazing statistic to have from our first set of authors. So we're really pleased with that.
And as Kelly said, I mean, we are doing things like discussing with NCPs, national contact points, to inform researchers that that Open Research Europe exists. I think. And I did not get whether most of the audience comprises librarians. I think that's what we said earlier. No.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm thinking now, Akim, what are small things or big things that libraries can do to help that? I'm even thinking, can you, for example, include a logo in your webpage with a link? Oh, look, this is an opportunity for you. This also exists, for example. I mean, what other things? Librarians are so close to researchers. Researchers look to you for information, for their publishing needs, for the information access needs. So we must take advantage of you, I guess. I'm thinking, what can you do for ORE to in this direction? I guess is my question too.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking to start reaching out to individual institutions as well, to potentially put on events to just raise awareness of the platform at the institution level as well. And that's something that we would be really happy to collaborate with the research librarians on to arrange. So do feel free to reach out to myself if that's something that you're interested to host at your institution.
And I think a colleague from Finland mentions that, Anne, that it would need to be included in the Finnish list. So, Anne, what can we do in that direction? Yes, I think we would appreciate, further, I mean, to discuss with F1000. And I mean, I'm sure they're aware they're going all sorts of different directions and having discussions with colleagues along these lines. With regard to preservation, which is what you are asking, I mean, we are preserving the content for sure with Zenodo, and so the content will be long-term preserved, that's for sure. But the commitment of the Commission is not until 2026. It's at least it's a component of the European research area, which is our policy for unifying the research area across Europe. So scientific knowledge and free circulation is a very essential component, and Open Research Europe is part of the relevant communication, which signals the political commitment of the Commission to, way more than 2026. Our question here is whether after 2026, or whether at that time other players will come to collectively support Open Research Europe. So the question is whether we are going to open it to other funders and research institutions. But the Commission itself is certainly committed to supporting it for many more years for its own beneficiaries. That's quite clear.
I don't know if you had anything to add on that point, Mike, about long-term preservation.
Not necessarily on that, but just on what you said before about the requirements the big indexers have. As a good example, Scopus for new journals or platforms require you to have published for 2 years. So there's always a bit of a lead time with new platforms. I'm also just looking at this Finnish list because I had a feeling we were on it. Yeah, I'll put it on the chat if we are on it.
Thanks, Mike.
And I think Rupert is also asking on how funding panels and evaluators are, EU funding panels are taking publications in ORE into consideration. So Rupert, in Horizon Europe, we explicitly exclude journal impact factor from evaluation criteria. So this is an explicit thing. So a publication in ORE would be evaluated as any other publication. So the way we do this is when we ask researchers to list their most important publications in order of importance. Usually, I think it's limited to 5, with the exception of ERC maybe, or Marie Curie. They list what they consider important. We also ask them to make a qualitative justification, to provide a qualitative justification of why these publications are important. And this is how it is to be evaluated. It's to be evaluated by itself and not by proxy of where it's published. So so in that sense, ORE would not be any different than any other publication. So, and the evaluators are explicitly instructed to not consider the GIF. It's not part of the evaluation criteria.
Ivolka's also mentioned as well that a large asset of ORE is that it's compliant with all the open science and open access policies, at least at the level of Horizon Europe, but that also often aligns with national and institutional level policies. I 100% agree with this. I think this is one of the major benefits of for authors of publishing in Open Research Europe, that they can ensure that they're fully compliant with all of the requirements associated with their Horizon Europe grant. And this is something that we do mention to authors all the time when we're speaking to them, and something that they're very grateful to hear. I think that a lot of the requirements can be quite confusing to authors if it's their first time with the Horizon Europe or Horizon 2020 grant and publishing according to these principles, especially around open data, can be quite off-putting and confusing to them. So the fact that we're able to provide that level of support for them and ensure that it's fully compliant just by publishing with us sort of removes that administrative burden from them. Any other questions, I guess?
If I may speak.
Finnish, okay.
Yeah, if I may speak from Finland, I'm Ann Lehto, I'm a library director, and so I at the University of Vaasa, which is a small university on the west coast of Finland. And so one question that confuses me about this ORE and Faculty 1000. So when you say that you are on the list, does that mean that this Faculty 1000 research series is on the list, or what is the exact name of the name of the source when you have published in ORE?
Open Research Europe.
yeah, but so it's not this, because I found in our list now this Faculty 1000, and I have many years ago I met a person from Faculty 1000, and it was a little bit different approach at that time. So and I'm not so involved in this topic now, but I can try to contact in Finland these persons who are responsible for this list and ask and try to motivate them.
That would be wonderful, Anne. Thank you. But I think you are posing a very legitimate and interesting question. So F1, just to clarify, because you may get such questions from researchers. So Open Research Europe is the open access, peer-reviewed publishing service of the European Commission for the beneficiaries of Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. So, and this means that we offer this service to them, this publishing service, to publish their research, original research that results from Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020 at no cost to them. And this is because we undertake the cost. Now, our platform, Open Research Europe, is supported by F1000. So we have implemented Open Research Europe through a tender. And the winner of that public tendering competition was F1000. F1000 is, you know, a very well-established publisher as well as infrastructure and technology provider. So we get services to provide Open Research Europe to our researchers from F1000. So, however, F1000 as a publisher has its own publishing venues, right? And it has F1000 Research, or it can be a provider of services, technological publishing, or two other publishers. For example, the Wellcome Trust also has its own publishing platform and service, for which F1000 also is a provider. So that's a difference. So I think you have in your list F1000 Research, which is their main publishing venue, that of F1000, but this is not ORE. So
yeah. So what would be, my further question is, what would be would it be then if we would have this this on the list, would it be like ORE, or what
it would be ORE? It's Open Research Europe. Yeah.
Okay, clear. Thank you.
It is an entirely different publishing venue, which is, however, supported also by F1000.
Thank you.
Mike, did you want to take the question on PubMed indexing?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to be specific, but this year is about as good as I can do for you at the moment. We're not far off an application, but then it's quite a long process of scientific review, technical review, and then setup, which can take anything between kind of 3 and 9 months in my experience. So yeah, it's very much on our list, as we're aware it's important to everybody.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if any of you would like to speak to the attitudes of the researchers at the organizations where you work, or if you're a researcher yourself, what your attitudes have been to Open Research Europe publishing model, what your sort of hesitancies would be about publishing your work on the platform, because I can speak a little bit to what people say when they speak to me, but if you have already discussed it with researchers at your organization, that would be super helpful for us to hear as well, and how we can best sort of offset those concerns.
None of you has spoken to any researchers about it? Research Europe?
Yes, I think we have spoken when we have discussed this Horizon Europe and European, what is this 2020, Horizon 2020, and this new program, and so that there is always a forum where they can publish. But it's not like the primary. I think somehow the primary is those high quality, you know, these more traditional high quality journals, for instance. So that we may also need to change our way of thinking.
Exactly, you're much to the point. I mean, it's an issue of how research is assessed. So researchers will publish because that's part of their job, but they also want to ascend professionally, and that makes sense. And they will publish since evaluation is so tightly connected only to publications, or nearly exclusively connected to publication and the publication venues, then this is currently an issue with ORE, because it is a different model. It is a different model, but at the same time, the Commission is trying to change this model, and at the same time, ORE is offering also a number of very positive elements, such as very robust policies, guidelines, open peer review, transparency. So I think these issues will become more important increasingly with the research community and also with the universities. So, but this is a cultural change that needs to take place, and this, as we all know, is not just a technological solution to fix from one day to the next. It takes time. In this sense, I mean, I think taking advantage of my position here to the mic, close to the mic, I think I would like to ask you again, what do you think libraries can do to support embedding Open Research Europe in the in the research processes, in your, making it better known to researchers in a systematic, fashion, knowing your universities, your researchers, and the way the libraries function. How could you help systematically?
I think one thing that would be worth discussing is how Open Research Europe is actually presented to researchers as an option for publishing, because one of the main sort of benefits, or one of the motivating factors, I believe, maybe I'm speaking for you, Victoria, here, but for the Commission to launch this type of venue was to make sure that no research output from any of the work that they're funding was wasted. So if there is a bit of research that doesn't quite fit into the original research article that you're going to publish at the end of your project, that maybe you would have posted on your laboratory website or hosted in your institutional repository, but not published as an article within its own right, the variety of article types offered on an Open Research Europe can provide you with the option to actually publish this as an additional published article for your, your CV, if you like, on Open Research Europe. So it's not necessarily about trying to capture that main original article from them at the end of their project, which of course we would love to receive, and many people do choose to send that to us, but we also understand the pressures around research assessment, and that is going to be a very long process to change. So we do have these alternative article type options available so that you can support this initiative and sort of be active within open science and open data by publishing on Open Research Europe, but still feel secure with your sort of career decisions, if you like, by choosing to publish in a more sort of impact measured venue, if that's what you feel you need to do at this time.
Great, and we've been talking amongst ourselves. I really honestly, I want to hear by some of the colleagues who are librarians here. Speak up. Give us some ideas. Tell us, what you can do.
Maybe people are a little bit Zoom shy.
Yes.
I think my email address, I think, will be sent round anyway, but if not, I'll pop it in the chat now. And if anybody does want to reach out to collaborate with myself or a member of my team about organising some sort of webinar at the institutional level, we'd be really happy to work with you on that. So if that's something you feel like would be really beneficial, do feel free to drop me a message and we can organise that. I think that's
I don't know, Kelly, if Liber probably has materials that can be systematically, thank you, Anne, that can be systematically given or have already been distributed to Liber members. I mean, I assume this has already been done, right? But if not...
One practical question, who should those persons contact if like this publication forum, if they want to discuss this matter? Who is what is the right contact?
About including Open Research Europe in that list?
Yeah, or discussing that further. Which one of you?
That would be Mike, but I mean, feel free to send anything to my email address and I can filter it to the most appropriate person, but yeah, on that occasion that would be Mike.
I'll put my email in the chat.
Perfect. Athena, I don't know if you can speak to the Liber resources that we have available that we could share among the members. I did see
to the members, yes.
Yeah.
I was writing it out in the chat, but I can speak up about it. Well, we have a designated page on our website already with some information about how libraries can be involved, and we're currently also working on a more specialized and targeted FAQs that will be designed and tailored to the research library needs, because of course there are general FAQs for the Open Research Europe platform, but we were hoping of making a more specialized set, if you will, that we were planning to distribute to our network, so we can address exactly that, how can you include this? What other questions you might have? And all of these questions have been asked during the events that we have organized for ORE during the last year, and we're hoping that it will help research libraries become the advocate and at least promote this platform as a nice solution to the researchers. Yeah. So that's what's currently on the way.
Cooking. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Athena. I also see here a question by Carolina. Is it mandatory for researchers funded by Horizon Europe to self-archive in ORE? No, two things. First, it's not mandatory. No, this is an option that we offer to researchers, and it will never be mandatory. So we do not tell researchers where to publish, but we do offer an option for them. And we offer this option, which also supports our open science policies broadly and innovative ways of publishing, and of course supports them meeting our requirement for open access for open access to research. The requirement actually is for open access in repositories. That's the requirement of Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, which is also why all the papers are sent to Zenodo, and that's how precisely they comply. So by publishing in ORE, researchers comply because their papers are sent to Zenodo. And they are obviously open access. But also to clarify that that ORE is not a repository. We've gotten to great extents to explain that this is a peer review publishing platform that works as any other journal or platform that is peer reviewed. So it is not a repository, it is a platform, it is a publishing venue. So
okay, well, if we don't have any more questions and nobody else wants to comment, then maybe we should wrap up there.
sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you to Victoria and Mike as well for presenting in this webinar with me, and yeah, for everybody for your comments and your questions and suggestions. You've got our email addresses in the chat, so please feel free to reach out if you think of anything afterwards, another way that we can collaborate. We're happy to work with you on that. Athena, any wrap up things you need to say?
No, thanks a lot, everyone, for attending and engaging. And you know where to find us if you think about any questions you would like to ask about how you can be more involved. Please feel free to reach out. There will be several other events for Open Research Europe, so stay tuned. And yeah, we'll see you at the next one. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yes, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.